Hi everyone, and thank you for coming here today to this episode of the Psychedelic Integration Compass. I'm your host, Clara, and here with me I have Deva Arani. She's an author and a trauma-informed integration guide. And today with her, we're going to be talking about plant medicine, of course, integration, and also the healing of the feminine, in relation to the healing of the feminine. And we'll be discussing also the difference between mother ache and mother wound and go really deep into that. So it's great to have you here, Arani. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So
Yeah, the pleasure. I'm really
nice.
glad that you reached out and we connected. So I'm gonna start from the usual, asking about a little bit about you, about your story, and what led you to your work with plant medicine and the healing of the feminine.
Well, thank you for asking. The truth is, my journey to plant medicine was kind of an unfolding and very unexpected. I I sort of began my spiritual path unintentionally. I took as part of my adaptive strategy to heal my childhood. I became an achiever and I took up long distance running. And as part of running those miles to prepare for those marathons, I found myself in a state of meditation. And at the time, it felt like a lot of the false identities would fall away. And I was just in the zone. And I realized that possibility was within me. And that started a path toward, that was kind of the beginning of my spiritual journey. And that path unfolded slowly too, because I had to let go of the parts of my life that weren't in sync with that longing for inner stillness, if you will. I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about this journey of mine, but basically, so I started a more traditional Eastern meditation practice, and that included the Buddhist teachings and also active meditations. And for many years, I tried to have my external life. I was married, was working as an attorney, all the things. I tried to bring that external life and fit it into these kind of new understandings. And that didn't work. So at some point, I had to choose. And I ended up having to let go of all of the parts of myself that were not in alignment, if you will, with more of the true me. So that kind of meant starting over, basically, at 40 and letting go of a marriage and all of the ideas, all of the surface kind of identities of who I was, kind of dipping into the patterns that were protective layers to avoid the actual pain of what I was protecting myself against, and healing. So as I let go of what wasn't actually serving my true authentic self, of course, then as existence is always so supportive, doors started opening for other possibilities and experiences. And at some point, I was invited to experience ayahuasca, the sacred grandmother of the Amazon. And at the time, I very much had a very deep and very committed practice with traditional meditation. And there was a part of me that thought, oh, that kind of sounds like cheating. I had no kind of context for it.
And when was
But
this? I'm just curious. Sorry for the quick interruption.
oh yeah, that was
When?
about 20 years ago.
Oh,
Just
wow. Yeah.
so I just turned 60. And so all of this unfolding kind of happened around 30 and then 40. But anyway, so we had flown out, my partner and I had just gotten together as a couple, and we'd flown out to California for our 60th birthday party for a good friend of his. And that's when the invitation came in. And I remember thinking his energy was very intense because he was having a big party. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's not, that's not, if that's not really, I'm not interested. But then on the plane home, I opened up this memoir by Isabella Allende, and I had been reading it several years ago before, and I had specifically chosen it because I was going to be in the Bay Area, and she lives in the Bay Area, and I thought, oh, well, and the page, the bookmarked page that I opened it to was her description of wanting to connect with her maternal lineage and going down to Peru for her own ceremony. And at that time, as I was reading that, I asked my partner, I said, is this what Scott was inviting us to? And he said, yes, exactly. And I was like, okay, well, then I'm going. And so that opened the doorway for my plant medicine path. And we went on dieta. Several months later, a traditional dieta. And wow, it was incredible. It was hard. It was scary. It was challenging, but it was also such an opportunity to kind of see in a visceral and like embodied way, who I am underneath all of these layers of conditioning and adaptations. And after that dieta, I still had kind of a like, oh, I don't know if the plant medicine is really my path. The dieta had been kind of a spontaneous leap, but we had a long planned trip to India that came 3 weeks later. And I was waiting to go into a 3-month meditation retreat. I was wandering Dharamsala, and I heard the sacred mantras in the streets, and I saw the sacred Tanka paintings, lined up and in the temples. And at some very crystal point, it was such a gift, I recognized the mantra, the Icaros, the paintings of the Icaros, the vibrations, and the vibrations in the Tanka paintings. It's all the same. And so in that moment, I had this deep and profound kind of that I don't have to worry about choosing my path, that truth is truth, and wisdom keepers are holding doors open for me. And all I have to do is just keep saying yes when it feels aligned, and when that yes feels true within me. And so then I could just drop the idea of, oh, I'm a plant person, or oh, I'm a da 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 da, and just that opened up my whole journey to the point. I mean, not the point, but to the idea of just being open to receptive to whatever door was opening. And so that's kind of my long story short of how I kind of entered the plant medicine stream. And just a few years into the stream, I was asked to start helping my traditional teacher who comes from the Amazon of Peru. And so I've been kind of helping bring people to the jungle and that kind of thing ever since. So I have a lot of dietas. I've been on dietas for my own healing, and I've also been on dietas in a more supportive role of bringing people who are seeking healing and while doing my own work, also holding space. So
Yeah.
that's kind of,
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
yeah,
So, I think it's so wonderful, what you mentioned about how truth is just truth, right? And then, thanks probably to the plant as well, the plant medicine, you recognize, my God, it's all the same. And
yeah,
I really kind of like that really touched me, said I realized that I didn't need to choose my path. It was just enough to say yes to what felt aligned. And I felt like almost relief when I listened to that, at the moment, going through a bit of a kind of rethinking of, how I put my offers out there and my offerings. And I'm like, how beautiful that is, to just trust and just notice and a really big opening because I also started from meditation, for example, Buddhist meditation about 25 years ago, something like that. And that was before I got into plant medicine. I was always on and off with it. I wasn't super disciplined with it. Um, it's a different kind of world, it seems like on the surface, it seems it's very
yeah,
about discipline and silence and stillness. And then you realize the principles are all the same, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly.
it's really kind of beautiful to kind of realize that and yeah, it's just a real opening. And then on the same lines, now I'm going to bring your plant medicine experience to what led you to write your book that we'll be talking about in a moment as well. And how, the focus kind of shifted a little bit on working with the mother and mother energy and the way you look at it from what I've seen from the, kind of like the outline of the book as well, it's a very expanded way of looking at mother energy and not just a personal mother. So we can go into it in quite a little bit of detail. But yeah, can you tell us how you went from then experiencing plant medicine and doing all these other things that you were doing, other practices, to then being yeah, kind of taken onto this path of working with mother energy, specifically.
Sure. Um, well, um, as I mentioned, I was invited and began supporting people in their own medicine journeys and paths. And that led to people seeking me out for support in integrating these experiences. I'm not a therapist. My partner is a therapist. I have many friends who are therapists of various kinds. But so as people were asking to sit with me and efforts to help understand and integrate their journeys or their dietas, or it often became, of course, it's not about just this isolated moment of what happened in the ceremony, but what's actually happening in the now and what's actually happening in the body and what have you been carrying that needs to be healed or processed or released. And so word of mouth, it's just kind of been unfolding. More people started coming. And as this was happening, I realized, gosh, I should probably think about getting some legitimate training, if you will. And I thought about going back and getting a master's in psychology and but I have a law degree, and there's something about the intellectual process of trying to pin myself down as now I'm a therapist, that the label, the strategy kind of it all just didn't feel right. But I did end up taking a compassionate inquiry year-long professional training that was offered by Gabor Mate. And it's for therapists, and I kind of slid in under I'm a certified yoga teacher, and I have a life coach certification. And so I kind of slid into the professional qualifications through those IDs. And so I took that year-long course, and it was so informative. And basically what it did is it brought together a lot of the understandings that I was already working with, and helped me to create a cohesive kind of ability to work with people, like a little template, which you actually don't use when you're working with people, but it created some structure around my sessions, if you will. So I wasn't just winging it anymore. And throughout that year, we practiced every week with our cohort, and then we offered sessions, and we, filled out all the forms. And I noticed that a lot of the women that I was working with, the purpose of, I guess, kind of eventually when you're doing compassionate inquiry with someone, you're trying to help them identify what's happening in the body. And if you have a good session, you can have them actually hold that feeling, whatever it is, the tension, the recognition that perhaps this is sadness or this is anger. And if it's a really good session and they're able to, I don't mean good in the sense of good or bad, but I mean just a deep session is a better word. You can ask them to trace that back. And for instance, a question might be, okay, you have tension in your shoulders. And once they're kind of stabilized and able to be present with that sense, once they're able to say, actually, this is anger, and if you can get them to allow some embodiment and felt sense of that anger, then the next kind of step in the healing process is to ask, how far back does this anger actually go? And oftentimes the body, the shoulders, the pain in the heart, the stomach speaks immediately. And it will be, I remember when I was 5 years old and I was hiding in my room as my parents were fighting, or da-da-da. And so as I was offering these compassionate inquiry sessions, first in the year-long training and then later setting out my CI shingle, if you will, all the clients coming in were women. And oftentimes when we got to this place where we were tracing back, it was leading to the mother. And it just became a reoccurring theme, which I noted because I have a deep part of my spiritual journey has been to heal my own mother wound, if you will, the mother ache. It's been part challenging, but also such a gift in terms of my own evolution and teachings about love and what love actually is, and acceptance and forgiveness. So the theme was there, and then I just had to open my eyes and say, okay, this is the direction that I'm taking my work. Mm-hmm. I sent out an email that said to a few people who I knew would be comfortable, saying, our sessions have centered around this. Would you be willing to, write a few words about how it's helped you in this regard? Thinking to, there's a part of my mind that's always trying to formalize or make more official, right? Always longing for definition. But the thing is, when I sent that email out, it kind of bounced. Sometimes I picture just a bouncy ball to an editor who then contacted me. And then the next thing I know, I was being invited to write a book on the mother wound. The mother ache is what I call it. And so it's kind of, again, and then it just was a matter of saying yes, which was kind of scary, but I absolutely, of course. And then when I accepted that mother wound invitation book, then the next thing was, and by the way, we want the integration book too. So it's all just kind of unfolding from there.
Yeah, so it just seems like a very organic kind of progression of, you going through your own personal journey, then start holding space, and then, getting training, getting clients, and then recognizing a certain kind of client that kept coming to you. And it's just really kind of beautiful how it all kind of, comes in together, and then and it's so important to ask then clients, how did the session help you? Because it really tells you so much more about what is this integration work that I'm offering, really doing for people, because we all have our own medicine, our own unique
Exactly.
medicine to give.
Yeah.
Whether you're an integration practitioner or not, we all have our own unique medicine. And it's interesting to see how I think it's such a valuable thing to do with people, that you've worked with, to just see and also in time how that unravels for them. And so, yeah, talking now about Mother Ache. What's the title of the book again? Remind me the entire title.
It's called The Mother Ache, and it's um, the wounded daughters. Well,
It's a book.
healing the wounded daughter within. Sorry.
Sorry, so that again says the Mother
Blushing.
Ache and
Yeah, it's called The Mother Ache, Healing the Wounded Daughter Within.
yeah,
So
that's it. Yeah, like just to be clear, everything will be in the description once this episode goes, online anyway. But it's good to kind of mention it.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you sent me a little the preview of it, and there was so much in there, and many, many things that we could be talking about there. I'm really interested in going into more depth into Mother Ache, and also because that resonates with my own story as well. I had that. It's been one of the primary healing kind of like aspects for my life on my path as well. It has been, and then it's very interesting because just to say a little bit more about my story in relation to this, that as I started doing healing, especially with grandmother ayahuasca, and reconnecting to my feminine, is when I realized how disconnected from my feminine I was, right? Partly
Yeah.
because of my history and the fact that my dad was the primal kind of like, parent for me. Um, but then I realized, oh my God, it's not just me, that really do live in a society that is still very masculine kind of oriented, especially the way of working, the way of living is very just go, 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 produce, do, and
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
much so, yeah. And I realized after, as I was doing my healing, I was like, it's not really just my history, the world is still a little bit, realizing how, not a little bit, but how this energy of doing and producing is kind of really kind of, there's a real imbalance between that and the just receiving and the kind of being still and letting things emerge by themselves in the space that you create within yourself, that more feminine energy. So yeah, there was quite a long kind of process, and I'm still in the process, still getting to the go, 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 do, very often
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
very
absolutely.
easily get into that. In fact, today, just before this recording, I was a little bit there. I was like, okay, Chloe, just kind of relax, just space, just, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've got quite a few questions. Let's start with talking about the difference between mother wound and mother ache. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I was, it came as I was approaching kind of the book. The mother wound is kind of a psychological term, and there are several books that are written about it. But it it came to me that I prefer not to refer to my healing journey as a wound, because, and so the book is called The Mother Ache because I feel like okay, first of all, I'll just, sorry if I bounce around a little bit, but in the
That's okay.
Sufi tradition, there's an understanding that the Great Mother, who is actually the first understanding of divine before we started to make the divine more personified and recognizable, that she endows us with the measure of the worlds. She entrusts us with healing, a measure of the pain in the world, and endows us with the capacity to heal that. Excuse me. So if we look at our relationship with our mother as part of our path to awakening and to creating a vibration of awakening for others, then we don't want to call it a wound, because it's not. It's an ache. And what happens with any mother, any child is there is a separation from self as we attune to our caregivers to survive. And so the ache is the longing for wholeness and the longing to return to self-connection. And when we are able to connect to ourselves, that creates the opening to connect with nature and to connect with the divine. I mean, in a sense, it's my own understanding that my ability to connect with you, or to connect with my partner, or connect with nature, is intrinsically bound to my own inner connection. So when we're disconnected from ourselves, that reflects how connected we are outside of ourselves. It's a mirror. And so when I refer to it as the ache rather than the wound, what I'm really saying is, yes, it hurts. And yes, a Band-Aid may be appropriate, but it's not just that. It's so much more. It's kind of the guide leading you on your path. If we didn't have the ache, we wouldn't step out on our journeys toward wholeness, right? If that makes sense.
It does, yeah. So I'm going to reflect a few things back here. It's very interesting because I have an autoimmune which has been in remission for a while, and it's only after doing some really deep inner work that I started seeing it as a teacher. See the illness as a teacher. And again, I can call it illness, but I could just call it ache. So it's in remission. The potential for it to be activated is always there if I don't look after myself in certain ways. And sometimes even if I do, if I'm in a day that I'm quite sensitive, I still might feel some pains. So it's there. But at the same time, it also keeps me in check. The digestive condition keeps me in checking what I digest, what I put in my body. And I came to realize with time that really is so metaphorical, because it's about what I allow into my field in every way. It's not just food, it's energy, thoughts, self-talk, just to be really filtering what I allow in. And therefore, it's kind of a blessing because it's just keeping me on my toes. And it's allowing
me. It requires awareness.
Exactly. And it's
presence.
allowing and presence. So it allows me to cultivate presence, awareness, discernment on what to let in, what not to let in. And really just be really kind of, as I said, conscious of the path that I'm on as well. And it keeps me in check. So in a sense, it is a blessing.
Yeah, it's a teacher.
It's a teacher.
One of your teachers in this life,
But it's painful as well. And that's the thing. So I see in a very similar way, right? Because I also believe that, it's very much related with to the relationship with my mother. That's probably how I developed it. That's how I developed the inner constellation for it to come to, be activated.
Absolutely.
Something that, they don't know how it comes or not. And, I can actually mention it. I've got Crohn's and I've had it for a long time, for 20 plus years. And as I said, it's been in remission for many years now. I'm off medications, but the potential is there. And I don't think it's just genetics. I think it's happy or unhappy genetics that make it come online, right?
Right.
Related to the relationship with my caregivers, specifically, I think with my mother as well.
Yeah.
Part of my mother ache, if you like to say, right? But it's in time I came to see it, even the relationship with my mother, I came to see it as such a teacher and an initiator as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have to ever define it as, one or the either. It just because it's a teacher and because it's kind of encouraging our journey doesn't mean that it's not painful, or it doesn't, it doesn't feel muddy or sticky or hard. But we can also be grateful, because when we get through that muddy, sticky hardness, there's a softness and there's an acceptance and an opening of the heart that actually is again a mirror to the difficulty. So the deeper we go in the mud, the lighter we are coming through the mud and out of the mud, sort of, if you will. There's always the balance.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. It does. So, yeah, talking about relationship with mother, right? So I was reading also what some of the kind of passages in your book, and we can think about our own personal story, and then we can expand it out to what symbolically this relationship with the mother is, and what we are called to heal in the relationship with the mother, because once that you've been on this path and you've done some work on your personal history, which by the way never really quite ends, it just gets
Yeah.
deeper. And I used to call it deeper healing, but I think it's just a deeper discovery, deeper growth that you can always have, and I like the fact of not seeing it as a wound either, but just seeing it as a bit of an activating pain that sometimes, it kind of redirects you or makes you look into some things that you haven't looked at yet, or you can look at into a lot deeper. But there is also a more kind of metaphorical and symbolic aspect to this relationship with the mother that can be probably kind of expanded to not just our personal life, but also the relationship with the planet, the relationship with the whole maternal lineage of our ancestors, for example, but not just my individual one, but the one of everybody. And so I know that you talk about how really this healing that happens in this relationship with the mother is, yeah, for ourselves, but on a bigger scale, has really kind of involves the whole um, situation with Mother Earth as well. So would you like to tell me a little bit more about that as well?
Yes. So when we are healing our personal pain, usually whether it's integrating a sacred plant medicine journey or looking at our relationship with our mother, for instance, those being my kind of two areas that I'm most focused on, but almost always it comes down to the issue of feeling separate and disconnected and not centered within self. And so when we feel disconnected and kind of not centered within self, it causes us to want to reach outside of ourselves and to find answers, to find solve, to find ways to avoid, however you want to look at it. But basically, if we think of it in terms of what's happening on our planet, a simple way of looking at it is extractive. We're extracting, we're trying to fill ourselves because we don't feel connected within. So healing is an opportunity to reconnect with self and to feel centered within self. And when we're reconnected in such a way, and the way I understand it is that we have three intelligence centers, the navel, the heart center, and then like more of a subtle neutral mind. When we are able to bring those aligned and connected, then we don't have this energetic pull to extract. And when we're connected to self, we feel connection to both our human brothers and sisters, but also the planet, Mother Nature. We realize the animals, the trees, we realize that we're not actually separate. And in that understanding, that creates an energy of reciprocity and care rather than extraction. And the word that's coming to mind is actually betrayal. I don't think I've used that before, but in a sense, when we are disconnected from self, we betray ourselves all the time because we're seeking approval, or we're seeking attention, or we're seeking distraction, whatever it is. But it's kind of, in a sense, a self-betrayal. And what's coming to me in this moment is that we're betraying not only ourselves, but we're also betraying our planet. We're not caring for it. We're not appreciating it. We're not tending it. And in the extreme, we're kind of destroying it, which is a terrible, terrible understanding. And so it's all related. When we heal ourselves, we create an ability and a capacity to connect to ourselves. And when we are connected to ourselves, we have capacity to support and connect with Earth. And when we're connected with Earth, we're not careless and sloppy or lazy. We're actually attuned to and supportive. And we need that individually. And individually, it seems like, well, what do? I recycle, But individually, then that's the ripple effect that we need. And if one person is walking through with reverence and appreciation for how miraculous this planet is in nature, that ripple effect, maybe the neighbor picks that up and says, wow, da, 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 da. And so that's really what we need. And that is feminine. We're not grasping, we're not teaching, we're not lecturing, we're not demanding. We're actually walking the walk with heart, if you will.
Yeah. And what came to me while I was listening to you, this concept of taking care of, right? So that's really very core, the healing kind of like a process. And as we reconnect to the feminine within, and it is about connection, right? As you said, if you feel that you're disconnected, then you don't really see the reciprocity that's there. But through the healing process, there is this element of reparenting yourself and remothering yourself, especially if that's one of your main challenges has been in the past, right? And taking care of yourself more. And therefore, as well with the earth, same thing. Taking care. I was listening to you, the words that you were using, supportive, connecting, reciprocity, and it is about taking care of the earth and mothering the earth just the same way that he mothers us. That's the thing is we can eat thanks to the earth. Survival is only possible because of all the fruits that we get and all this kind of like really kind of looking after us in a sense. It just needs the same thing back. It needs to be taken care of. And it is so much a state feminine, you're right. It is so much about also connected about how do we reconnect to the feminine within that energy of taking care of, and not, as you were saying, extracting, using, or just looking at it as completely separate. So it's a lot deeper than just doing it for yourself and what could be your history or your upbringing. It's a lot deeper than that. But there is the element of in the healing process of reparenting and taking care of
Yeah. And then on another level, part of your question was the lineage, and it's my understanding, and I've been taught and have experienced through my own sacred plant medicine journeys that as I'm working to heal what I've been entrusted to heal, that there is a ripple effect in my own lineage. And so when I'm healing my own mother ache, I know I'm healing my mother's childhood ache, and maybe my maternal grandmother, and some indigenous wisdom keepers teach that when we heal ourselves, we're healing 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. So it's personal healing, and then it's ancestral lineage healing, and then it's also healing kind of the bigger planetary stream, if you will. And it's so important to understand that, we're not actually separate from Earth. We're comprised of the exact same elements that make up Earth, water, all of the things. And so just to start to feel into those understandings and think, yes, okay, it's not like it's something outside of us. It is us. We are it.
Yeah. Yes, that's so true. And I mean, to take it a step further, before I actually ask you a more practical kind of maybe integration question on living with the family, I'm gonna take it completely out there. So this is something that just came to me while you were talking. I don't know if you're aware of the seven mirrors of relationship from the Essenes. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, no, I haven't
You haven't?
actually.
Okay, so the Essenes were this um more sect, could say, at the time of Jesus Christ, I think, I might be wrong.
Yeah, I know that they were
Yeah.
alleged teachers.
Yeah, they were
Rather
teachers. They
than
lived in I think in the either Sinai desert or in some remote areas, and it was actually very shamanic how they were living as well.
yeah,
And they left
exactly.
these scrolls with this ancient wisdom that was part of how they lived their lives. And they left the seven mirrors of relationship where they identified there are seven mirrors, in which we see ourselves in others, and the way we are others reflect um, elements of ourselves back to us, right? And there is the mirror
Right.
where, is sometimes what we reflect is what we deny, sometimes what we reflect is what we judge, sometimes what we see in other people is what we've lost, so it's
Mm-hmm.
very
Oh,
interesting.
right.
But
Yeah,
one of the
fascinating.
mirrors, which I find fascinating, and I don't know how much I got my head around it, but I'm going to connect it back to what you were saying about the connection with Mother Earth. If we take it even further, it basically says that your relationship with the feminine and your mother, whether it's your physical mother, or just with mother, with the energy of mother in this lifetime, and same thing with father, reflect your relationship with your divine mother and your divine father,
Oh, interesting.
right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
the challenges that you have in connecting with the divine mother and divine father. I was like, oh, when I read it, I was like, I'm not sure I understand
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But
That's like almost like a koan or like an unanswerable question that you could actually play with over time, ever evolving, right? But
yeah,
when I hear that, just my initial relationship with my mother was one of abandonment. And so if I take that teaching, then it's like in that, in that, and I'm not, tell me if you think I'm kind of getting this, but in that space of when I was really deep in the wound of abandonment, then I was also experiencing abandonment of the divine mother in kind of this parallel way. And so as I'm healing that sense of abandonment, then I'm also healing that sense with my own mother. Then I'm also perhaps healing that sense of abandonment with the divine mother. And so then as I draw closer and closer to my own inner wholeness, then I'm also closer and closer to the wholeness that is the divine in essence. So that's how I interpret that. That's just
yeah,
my kind of initial take, and it makes so much sense. And what a beautiful way to actually think about the healing journey
right,
is that
yeah. When
your journey is a mirror with your relationship with the divine.
That's what
So
it says. That's what that
wow,
message says. It's
incredible.
so powerful because I'm like, oh my God. And I was thinking about it and I was like, so basically you're set in this lifetime to heal that wound because through lifetime somehow you believed that that wasn't there for you, right? Or you believe
Right.
that wound was actually what your relationship with the divine was, but it's not. And that's why you put back into this lifetime to try to heal it because that's not the truth. of
Exactly.
distance, but
Yeah.
somehow it's very profound. It's exactly
Oh,
how
it's
you described it. It's exactly
beautiful.
how I see it. That it's not your mother, it's not just the mother, the earthly mother, and the mother that you've experienced in your childhood, but that it's a gateway for you to heal that deeper wound where you believe the divine mother is not there for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, those
Yeah. I love
mirrors are
that.
very are beautiful. That's like
Yeah, I'm excited to learn about that.
take a look at it. There's a video. Greg Braden talks a lot about that, and there's a video that he's done with explaining them really kind of like thoroughly one by one.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so I wanted to ask you in terms of how the way you work with people, and I know everyone has their own personal, journey. Um, what could be one thing that comes to you, like a one either tool or something that people could look into to find out more clarity about where they stand with their mother path? Meaning, what can someone, ask themselves that could give them a little bit of clarity where they're at with it, um, in terms of, whether they're connected or disconnected from the mother within, at least, living out what relationship they have with their own mother, but if they are disconnected already. I'm just curious to know that if there's something that it's an indicator of that can, people can realize where they're at with it, potentially how they could move forward as well.
Hmm. That's a that's a really interesting question. It actually gives me pause. Um, I think the the kind of the measure is a sense within of either contentment or lack of contentment with self. And so in the early conditionings and adaptive um, patterns that develop when we're young in relationship to our caregivers, a perfect example is, let's say we cry and we're not fed, the bottle doesn't come. So there's kind of an internal understanding that comes through that might look like I'm not important or my needs aren't important. And I call these, they can be called core beliefs. I call them early meanings. And even though we grow and eventually we're able to feed ourselves, and now we're buying groceries and we're feeding our own children, those early meanings don't actually go away in our kind of subconscious minds and nervous systems until they're healed. So one way to kind of understand if healing mother wound, mother ache is a part of your journey, is to kind of take some time to think about what your own early core beliefs or meanings are and how they come up in your life. So if you're wandering and you have an interaction with a friend and your takeaway is that, oh, I'm not important, or oh, I'm so dumb, or oh, I'm unlovable, these very, very early meanings, then that's kind of something to look at and where that came from and how it formed in your nervous system and your subconscious. So that would be probably, if you're looking for one kind of, I think your question was one kind of giveaway that perhaps this healing might help. I think it would be to kind of spend some time looking at the internal messaging that comes up when things are stressful or when things aren't going well, and what is that message for me? For instance, having the abandonment issue, my early meaning or core belief was that I'm unlovable, and so that played out in my life in various ways. Part of that played out, and I spent an awful lot of energy taking care of friends and trying to please them so that they wouldn't abandon me, because I had the core belief that I was unlovable. Part of my healing journey was to stop doing that and actually to say, I don't, I'm sufficient of myself and I don't need to please you. It's actually more healthy for both you and me if I'm honest with what I'm giving, and I'm giving from a place of wholeness rather than need, right? So that's just an example of how the mother ache kind of acts out in our lives, and how understanding it can then help heal it in a very short.
Yeah, thank you for that. And how do you think plant medicine, and to me, grandmother ayahuasca comes to mind because it has a very feminine energy, although I've heard of other people experiencing the plant in being quite androgynous, and sometimes it's feminine, sometimes it's not. But how do you think that plant medicine can support this healing with the mother? And of course we both know plant medicine is not for everybody, but for the people who are called to use it, how do you think the plant medicine can help this journey?
Well, that's
An integration with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, not just taking the medicine. Yeah.
For me, my understanding of plant medicine, having all the 20 years and all the however many dietas, is that in the indigenous tradition that I'm a part of, and is part of me, the plant medicine, ayahuasca, has two kind of intentions around healing, and one is self-knowledge and the other is healing body, mind, and sort of spirit. And the way that actually works is so different. Each ceremony, I've had hundreds and hundreds of ceremonies. Each ceremony is different. So the medicine is always meeting us where we need to be met and showing us what needs to be healed. And we come in with intention, and we also need to be open to surrender. And so many times in integration sessions or integration circles, I've heard people say, well, I really came and I thought I was going to work on this, but I ended up over here. And I know that that's what was needed, right? But so ultimately, all of this being said, that the plant medicine opens up a possibility to reconnect. We're on this level where we're living in this culture, we're disconnected from self. I know I keep saying this, it's a recurrent theme, but when we take plant medicine journey, it actually is a doorway to reconnect. And that's why it's so powerful. We're in the ceremony, our consciousness is altered, and we're actually experiencing our bodies. We're actually feeling the stress or the pain or the trauma that we've been carrying unconsciously, for perhaps decades. And when we're releasing through purging, we're feeling it. Maybe there's no language around it, but we're actually feeling and connected to letting go. So long story short, and then also, of course, there's the most miraculous gift of feeling connected. And oftentimes people, for the first time in their lives, not only do they feel connected to their hearts, their bodies, but also there's the opening and the understanding that everything is one. We're all connected, that nothing is separate, right? So in a nutshell, if I were going to say in terms of healing, it's the reconnection, it's the possibility of reconnection. We experience the reconnection. The integration work is actually solidifying that in our lives. And that is the real work. And it takes intention, and it takes discipline, and it takes the ability to fall down and get back up, and keep going, and know that it's unfolding,
and trusting that it's
it's not easy,
and it's not easy, and that is the ultimate part of taking care of, right? So you've had the opening that you're really gonna take care of that experience. Are you gonna really take care of yourself? Are you gonna really integration, I see it as, to me, as a real kind of feminine energy to it as well. It's about bringing kind of like everything together, but not in a way that is necessarily cognitive, because that's the other thing that I read in the book, which I agree with, and I use as well with my clients. I'm working in a way that is very body-based too, not just cognitive, not just logical, just let things kind of come around, and really trusting, and that you will. I also believe that the psyche has integration is like a natural tendency that we have.
Exactly.
The psyche wants to integrate, wants to become whole, wants coherence, wants harmony, and it's part
that's
of evolution.
the ache, that's the longing.
And also wants change, because we're here to evolve on this planet. We're not here to stay the same. If you're just looking at the history of the planet, animals, plants, and humans, we're here to evolve. And when things get discombobulated, then there is a moment maybe of rapture, kind of like, so the things can be built back on and be reintegrated more harmoniously. And that is the work, as you were saying, as much as the opening during the ceremony or wherever you're taking plant medicine can give you the possibility of reconnecting, like you were saying. Then staying connected is actually a conscious choice that you do day by day through integration.
And it takes space. And I know that, like, people say, well, how do I integrate? What do I do to integrate? But in the simplest terms, it's an unfolding over time. There's absolutely nothing to figure out in the mind. But the one thing that you can do to support it is to allow space. And what that looks like is different for everybody. And what I mean by that is, maybe it means just taking a walk in nature, or putting down the phone and maybe coloring a mandala. Or, I mean, we think, okay, meditation, what is meditation? It could be dance, it could be movement, it could be creativity, it could be quiet, it could be self-care, it could be a hot bath. But it's allowing space rather than distraction. And fear is a huge part of all of this. Change is scary. Healing is scary. Facing painful memories is scary. So
space kind of scary.
Yes, and just pausing and actually taking space to be with self can be terrifying, because it's so unfamiliar. We're conditioned against that. So if there was one thing, for one key of integration, it's just allowing some kind of space, tiny space, baby steps, and then building upon that, whether that's a morning practice or intentional time in nature, journaling, listening to music, whatever it is.
I was going to say, because yes, the mind will kick in anyway.
Yes.
It's not making it the main field of integration, but it will kick in, and it can help with the integration process too. But the key is to have the space for things to unfold. And then we are storytelling creatures. We can't help ourselves by going back into storytelling in our mind, throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen. Even just journaling is some kind of form of, externalizing, expressing some content that you've got, some thoughts, some feelings that you have inside. Is allowing that space so that it doesn't all become mind oriented, and actually feel the body and let things emerge and unfold. And then when the time comes, the mind kind of takes over again, you're in a slightly different place. But it is about really having pauses, right? So there can be a disruption of those patterns that are always the same, and you can study
Yeah.
things differently. And in psychosynthesis, which is one of the practices that I use for integration, we have this idea of the sacred pause and the choice point.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
mentioned this in other
Beautiful.
episodes, and I think probably in other disciplines they have that too. I mean, these are words that I use, but where you manage to create that space, and then thanks to the fact that you've got a space, you've got a choice. You're not into this automatic,
Yes. Yeah.
way
And
of being that you usually are.
yeah, exactly. And if you think of your mind and your current patterns as a river that's
Mhm.
just going, 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 you know, choice is available, but you have to have some kind of intention around it. And in our minds, then we think, okay, so I'm going to do, but the real choice is, can I just be? And that is that receptivity, that feminine energy of allowing rather than trying to control or figure out. And eventually, between the two, what we're really, really wanting is that centered balance so that the masculine and the feminine are actually working together cohesively. Because if we're all just going to be receptive and feminine, well, we're in trouble, not like the trouble that we're in over here. But so it's all kind of a dance, right? And eventually we want these to be working cohesively.
Yeah.
But to begin, we just need to reopen our ability to be receptive,
Yeah, which is
to
what
receive, to
to
ask for help, all of these things.
to allow space as well.
Exactly.
In that culture, we really don't. Well, it's been really great to speak to you. Thank you so much for this conversation. This has been really, really good, and really glad that we talked about, especially about the mother ache. And so I'm going to bring it back to you now because we're getting close to closing the episode. Where are you at now? And yeah, tell us about, if you have any offerings, you can tell us about the book and, you know, what's happening in your life now and what we can expect to see from you in the next few months.
Thank you for asking. Well, my my first book, which is Integration Alchemy: The Real Ceremony Is Your Life, is being published by a small publishing firm called Sentient Publications. They publish spiritual books, but distributed by Simon and Schuster. So that's coming out at the end of the month. And so I'm kind of in this weird space of trying to figure out how to launch a book, which is hilarious. I'm not much for self-promotion, but I'm also wanting to share my voice. So again, I'm just trying to find that authentic balance within and stay aligned and also not let my publisher down. And then in May, my second book, The Mother Ache, is coming out. And in terms of the offerings, I help run a nonprofit meditation center in Boulder, Colorado. I live in the mountains up above. So I'm starting in March, I'm offering what I'm calling an embody labs, which is just teaching embodiment, allowing healing and movement, yoga, breathwork, all of that. And then in May, as a part of the opening and the offering of the Mother Ache book, I'm going to start 6-month journeys for women who are interested in kind of going through the chapter is kind of, it's 12 chapters, and in each chapter there are kind of meditations and understandings and journal prompts, all of this. because I believe that we don't learn with our minds, we actually learn through our own experience. So the book is very, very experiential. Anyway, long story short, I'm going to start offering Zoom kind of women's study groups, experiential, to go through the book. And I have a couple of sisters who are more in the sacred plant medicine world, but we're thinking about offering feminine mother healing retreats of some kind coming up. And that's still kind of formative. All of last year, I was really busy writing these books. Both of them were in various stages, and suddenly I had these publishing deadlines. So it was just, and so I was just completely focused. And I just now finished the mother egg. It's just being formatted. So I'm just kind of, and it's the perfect timing because the seeds have been percolating and March is almost here. So starting to open up to actually working with people again, if you will. So I'm excited about it all.
Yeah, many good things in the pipeline. So
Yeah.
And as I said, I will have, links in the description of this video as well to so if you want to connect to Arani, you can. It's going to be easy to do so. Okay, well, thank you very much for today. It was really great to have you here. Thank you, Arani.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Clara. So nice to connect with you in this way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And thank you to our listeners, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us today on the Psychedelic Integration Compass. If you enjoyed the episode, remember to like the video and subscribe to the newsletter to stay updated on what's coming next. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.